This is the Life with Scars program. We're on page 47 of the textbook and talking about the one indispensable reaction that you should have toward other people from now to the rest of your life. What we're going to cover right now is a fundamental principle. This will be an essential piece to the program and is so indispensable to your long-term success that you'll want to pay close attention. In the last segment, we went over 4 extremely common reactions we are to avoid at all costs. I guarantee that if you refrain from doing those things, then in only a short amount of time, you'll notice a huge shift in your overall quality of life. Now in this segment, we're going to spend all of our attention and focus on one single reaction that you should have. This being the one positive reaction on your part that will make all the difference in your life. The reaction is sharing. That's right, sharing. And in particular, I'm talking about the importance of learning how to share your story often and effectively with other people. Now, you might be surprised to learn that this ability to share one's own personal survival story or story of adversity with competence and with tenacity is a talent that most individuals do not have. The majority of people who have gone through something physically traumatic actually feel awkward, inadequate, and timid to answer when asked the simple question, "What happened to you?" And honestly, it's no wonder why. You see, it's a lot easier to shy away from telling a complicated story than it is to tell one. Articulating the past can be emotionally and mentally difficult. And without practice, just like anything else in life, you won't get better at it unless you start rehearsing. And I will also say, by not sharing your story often, you miss out on one of the greatest opportunities of all human expression, which is the opportunity to feed curiosity. You see, the most underappreciated human attribute is curiosity. And you and I have the opportunity to feed curiosity often with words of experience. Questions contain a power that is reciprocal for the asker and the answerer. As knowledge grows within anyone, the soul is edified and enriched, while mental stature is matured. People want to learn from the moment they are born. You and I are no different. We are all curious people. You and I are in a very treasured position, though. We are capable of providing people with a unique brand of knowledge through our stories. Don't fear questions directed at your scars, disfigurement, or to the story that gave them to you. Those questions will never stop coming as long as you live. A fear of curiosity will surely bring you endless torment. Of course, the opposite is equally true. If you appreciate curiosity in people, and delight in your ability to answer questions, then you will enjoy endless pleasure in doing so.
You are listening to the Life with Scars program with Brady Armstrong.
Most likely, not a lot of time will pass before the next opportunity arises where you can share your story with someone. The occasion is bound to come soon, and whenever it happens to be, share your story with a little more detail than you have in past conversations. The sharing experience can be enjoyable and stress-free when our responses are prepared in advance. I recommend having 3 versions on hand that vary in length, of which you can select to use depending on how much time you have to share. Your story doesn't have to be memorized verbatim, but you'll be better off if you can spontaneously recite a summarized version of what happened to you at any given time. The best sharing experiences come when we tell our stories like a storyteller would, without feeling overly nervous or caught off guard when compelled to do so. So here's an activity. Use the scenarios provided to practice telling your story. For a short response, you are answering someone's question in 1 or 2 sentences only. A medium response contains a good handful of sentences describing what happened to you, and a large response gives your full detailed account. I provide some examples for you. A short response would look something like this. Imagine you're standing on a public bus and the next drop-off location is yours. 1 block away from your exit, the teenager behind you taps you on the shoulder and asks what your scars are from. What is the response you give before the bus comes to a halt? For example, your response might sound something like this. When I was a child, I had a really bad case of the chickenpox virus that left me with many scars on my face, arms, and body. I'm fine now, though. Thank you for asking. As you could tell, an answer like that is short, simple, and to the point. What would be your short response to the teenager? A medium-length response would look like this. In this next scenario, you've now changed to another bus and are traveling to a nearby town. A middle-aged man takes the seat next to yours and politely introduces himself as Brian. He is quiet most of the ride, but you notice him glancing your way periodically. 5 minutes before he gathers his bags together to leave, Brian tells you that his nephew was recently burned in a fire, and he is curious how your scars came about. What is your response to Brian? A medium-length response can sound like this. Thank you for asking, Brian. I wasn't burned, but my scars often give the impression that I was. When I was 6 years old, I endured a severely rare case of the chickenpox virus that erupted all over my body. I nearly died from the illness, and these scars are what are left over. Okay, so that was a medium-length version of a response that I could give to Brian. But of course, your story is completely different. Your scars may not resemble burns or anything like that. But nonetheless, what is a medium-length version of your story? What is a response that you could give? What would be your medium response to Brian before he leaves? Now we will go over the last of the three, the long response scenario. Brian gets off the bus. Right away, the woman seated behind you comes and takes the seat to your side. She introduces herself as Laura and says she couldn't help but overhear your conversation with the man who had just left. Laura is intrigued by what she heard so far and wants to learn more. She remains with you until you both depart the bus at the next town. Knowing you'll have more time to talk, you decide to give her a full detailed account. What is your response? Here's my example. I'm glad you have found interest in my story. Like I told the man who recently left, my scars are from a severely rare case of the chickenpox virus that I had when I was young. The virus erupted all over my body and I nearly died from it. The blisters from the chickenpox were not only on the outside of my skin, but on the inside of my body also. They were in my mouth, down my throat, and even inside my lungs. Because of how severe of a case I had, I was hospitalized, placed on a respirator, and in a coma for a long period of time. Eventually, I had to learn to eat and walk all over again. The good news is that I survived, and I'm here today. The scars you see are what are left from that important part of my life. They are not only reminders of what happened at that particular time when I was young, they also represent many more experiences that have happened since then. Having these scars has helped me understand the best ways for me to communicate with people. They have taught me to have perseverance and confidence in myself. Because of the lessons I've learned along the way, I have been able to overcome many obstacles. I might look different, but I feel great. All right, so again, that's my example of my long version of my story. But what would be your response to Laura? By having 3 different versions of your story planned and on trigger mode, you are prepared to respond to almost anyone. Again, don't feel like you need to memorize these responses word for word. Once you become familiarized and fluent with sharing the details of your story, sharing becomes easier. When you are comfortable with talking about your experiences and you don't escape opportunities to share them, you have fulfilled the purpose of this exercise. But don't forget to rehearse. It can be difficult to articulate the swirl of thoughts and feelings that are wrapped up in a dramatic story. All of us want to capture the swirl of thoughts and feelings we have. Marrying the experience with words that not only fit, but also harmonize with our emotions can be hard. That's why it is crucial that we take the time to plan our responses ahead of time. Practice by rehearsing your story alone. Start by describing what makes you different and talk out loud about the events you have been through. Expound on the lessons you've learned and how your life has been impacted so far. It's okay to start slow. Repeat and practice rehearsing often. As you become more expressive to yourself, you'll be more capable of sharing the same things aloud with other people. Not everyone is born to be an extrovert or a public speaker, and thank goodness for that. The message isn't to push you to be more outgoing. It is simply about gaining confidence, dignity, and self-respect. Anyone can appreciate their story if they learn to openly share it with others.
Thanks for listening. This concludes this segment of the Life with Scars program. For additional resources from Brady Armstrong or from Survivor Academy, visit survivoracademy.net and lifewithscars.com.